the traveling salesman comes up to the farmhouse. Farmer's sitting out on the porch in his rocking chair, and there's an old basset hound over in the corner on the porch, and the farmer and the salesman are talking, and every now and then the basset hound yelps. And finally the salesman says, "Hey, what's going on with your dog?" And he says, "Oh, he's laying on a nail." And the salesman says, "Well, why doesn't he just get up and move?" And the farmer says, "I guess it doesn't hurt that much." Welcome to the Business Brains and BS podcast, the podcast for people building businesses, battling their own brains, and occasionally stepping in a little BS along the way. So Greg and I were just talking a little bit about a phenomenon that I will see periodically with business owners. And it's kind of the concept of I know what I know what I don't know, but I don't know what I don't know. And what'll tend to happen is a business owner will start working with me and we'll start trying to get not trying, we'll start getting some clarity on where it is that they want to go, and how are we going to get there. And suddenly they move from this place of excitement and energy to a place almost of fear, where it's like, is this really what I want? Almost the only thing I can kind of compare it to, and I don't know if this is the right thing to compare it to, is like a buyer's remorse. So, as doing what you do, Greg, I just would be kind of interested in what your thoughts are on how the brain can say, I really, really want this. Oh, dear God, what have I done? I'm not sure that I want this. I'm going to jump back under the covers and pull them over my head and wish it away.
Yeah, well, there's always that thing of like, what do I think it's gonna be versus what is it really? That's always a thing that people deal with. Um, but when you were saying that just now, it made me think of something that someone said to me and to a group that I was in recently. The guy was talking about, our thoughts and the importance of trying to be mindful of our thoughts and kind of, the way he put it is he said there are thoughts that run us, and then there are thoughts that serve us. And, obviously we want the thoughts that serve us. And another thing he said along those lines, and I've been using this recently with clients. He said, when it comes to thinking, there's two steps. Step one, think it. Step two, believe it. Step two is optional. Like, just because you have a thought doesn't mean it's real. And so I could see that going either way with like this type of client you're talking about, where like maybe they had a thought going in of like what this was going to be, but it wasn't based in reality. And then when they got there, reality kind of smacked them in the face. Or maybe, it's the second, it's the doubt that's maybe not real, or that's kind of faulty, but they're choosing to believe it, you know? Um, I think I could see it going either way, we, like you said, we don't know what we don't know until it shows up.
And the really interesting thing about it is, there in many cases is some type of a pain point that's involved initially when I start working with a client. And it's kind of interesting to look back at it and say, okay, this pain point was enough to move you to say, yes, I want to engage with a coach. I want to put a plan together, and I want to start taking these steps. And I wonder, is it maybe a little bit of the comfort level, even though the comfort level is pain. I think I told the story before on here about, the traveling salesman comes up to the farmhouse. Farmer's sitting out on the porch in his rocking chair, and there's an old basset hound over in the corner on the porch, and the farmer and the salesman are talking, and every now and then the basset hound yelps. And finally the salesman says, "Hey, what's going on with your dog?" And he says, "Oh, he's laying on a nail." And the salesman says, "Well, why doesn't he just get up and move?" And the farmer says, "I guess it doesn't hurt that much." Right. And I wonder sometimes, is it almost the devil versus the devil you don't, even though the other side of that coin has got so much opportunity and so much potential.
Yeah. I'm glad it ended the way it ended. I thought the farmer was going to have a daughter and then we were going to go in a whole nother direction, but that's a different story. Yeah. Um, yeah. No, but that reminds me of, that's in the 7 habits of highly effective people. He says, people will put up with chronic pain to avoid acute pain. And that's the pain I know, at least I know, I know what to expect. I know how to deal with it. This other thing, even though everyone's telling me like it could be over with sooner, I don't know what to expect there. That's scary, you know. No, that happens to people all the time, all the time. I see that, I mean, someone staying in a bad marriage, because they don't know what life will be like outside of that marriage, or so all kinds of stuff. Jobs, staying in jobs that they hate because they don't know what else to do. Yeah, that's a constant thing. And so you talk about that pain point. I mean, that's kind of the cliche, for lack of a better word, like in like the addiction world. People use that term rock bottom. It's like, or you'll hear people say, "I got sick and tired of feeling sick and tired," that kind of thing. That's exactly what they're talking about. Is like it had to get so bad that anything's got to be better than this. Um, but to the people that haven't gotten there yet, I always like to say, like, it doesn't have to get there. You can you can stop at minimal pain. You don't have to go maximum. You know, um, but yeah, that's a huge. I don't know. I think that's like kind of human condition to some extent.
Yeah. Well, I think the really interesting thing is, that shorter term decision and the implication that it has long term, right? The ripple effect. It's like, I can put $1 away every day starting at age 21 when I get my first job or whatever it is, and just sacrifice that dollar every day. And when I'm 80, be shocked at the impact that just that little sacrifice had. Or I can, spend that dollar every day on, well, what can you even buy for a dollar, a dollar these days? And wish it away, and then just kind of, I guess, fritter it away would be a better way to put it. But yeah, I'm actually reading a book right now called The Willpower Instinct, and it's really interesting because that's one of the things that she talks about is that, that dopamine hit that we get sometimes, and how she talks about, we got want power, we got willpower, and we got I will not power, and how sometimes, those things will come into contrast. Like if I'm saying I want to weigh a certain amount at the end of the year, right? I got this goal and I break it down into sub goals. So I got what's my target weight by the end of the month, and what are the things I'm going to do, and I've got this grandiose plan to be at this weight by the end of this month. And then Friday rolls around and I go hang out with friends, and there's a cooler of beer, and I say, well, one will be nice. Well, you know what? One always tastes like another one, right? And then there's pizza, and instead of having 2 pieces of pizza, I have 6 pieces of pizza, and before I know it, the day's over, and I've taken a step backward toward that longer term goal. Because I mean, is it that I'm looking for that short term satisfaction? Is it the dopamine hit, or is it just that part of my brain has said, I'm going to shut off your long term and focus on the pleasure now?
I think it's a combination of things. Obviously, the dopamine hit is a factor always, but obviously there are also people who can, get past that and not let that derail them. You know, a couple things that come to my mind: if someone has a goal, this is a trick. Like, I shouldn't say trick. I mean, it's a technique, we'll say, that I use in therapy sometimes, where someone has a goal and I can tell it's something they really want. And it's something that seems like it would be beneficial for them, but there's all these little everyday life stuff that gets in the way, like you're talking about. Finding a way to continually remind them of reality, like in your example of going to the barbecue or whatever, the picnic, and the pizza and the beer and all that. If they had like a calorie counter or some kind of tracker or something, because they're actively working toward this goal and they've dialed in, like, okay, so for this goal, I need this many calories, or I mean, these kind of macros or whatever, someone who's really working on it. And then, so they get on their app or whatever, and okay, what is 6 pieces of pizza going to do to me? What is another beer going to do to me? That information can be pretty powerful, you know? Another pizza sounds great. It probably won't hurt anything. Oh, dang, there's 500 calories in this one piece of pizza. Never mind, you know? So that, just that kind of information can be really helpful. So whether it's like a client that, you're working with who has business goals, like making sure that it's clear that they can see how all these little decisions impact, you know? So like, somebody, this is a common kind of a common scenario I run into in my profession. The guy who everyone else tells him he drinks too much, but he's not too sure he drinks too much, you know? Um, and, uh, and so, when he's kinda battling that's the kinda conversations we'll have, like, okay, maybe it's, something that happened with the kids or something that happened at home, or maybe it's like a something that happened at work, that by itself might not seem like a big thing, but when something like that's happening every week or 2 and you can keep kinda pointing those out, eventually it's like, "Man, like, maybe I don't know if I drink too much or not, but I definitely have some alcohol-related problems in my life," and get that ball rolling in their head. So that can be really helpful, so the dopamine hit is a factor, but keeping that day-to-day reminder information, like, top of mind is a good way, to deal with that, and then how strong is that motivation for that goal? Like, how strong is the desire? 'Cause one of the things that I find is if it's an we've talked about this before some, but if it's an external thing where it's like, to go back to your example of like losing weight and the food at the, with the pizza and beer and everything, like maybe you really are like desperate to lose weight because you got a health problem or something like that. Um, or maybe it's just like, I don't know, one of your kids made a comment about your belly sticking out over your belt a little bit. And like it's annoying, but it wasn't like it was a spur of the moment, "All right, I'm gonna lose 30 pounds and get back to my high school weight," kind of moment. Or maybe it was, like, again, maybe like the doctor was like, I mean, you can stand to lose a little bit of weight, but it's not that big a deal to you, then you're gonna be way more likely to cave. And so really putting your time and energy into the stuff that really matters to you, you know, makes a big difference too. So going back to the business owner, like kind of what I was saying earlier, did you like the idea of doing this? Or is it tied to real life stuff that you really value? And then we just need to keep our focus going, like the calorie counter thing. Um,
Well, and I think that's interesting too, because yeah, I do use the calorie counter, but I use it at the end instead of at the beginning, right? So it's all right. I had the 6 pieces of pizza or whatever it is. Now I'm going to go in and put it in, and then it's like, holy cow, what have I done? Right? But it's it's too late to do anything about it. So that's an interesting thought as far as putting the timing. It kind of goes back to 7 habits of highly effective people, right? Before I do this, I will do that, or after I do this, I will do that, doing the habit stacking. So, that really is interesting to say, okay, if I put the calories into the tracker before I fill my plate, will that make an impact? The other thing that kind of popped into my head is in that book, it was kind of funny because you were talking about taking your thoughts captive a little bit earlier and being aware of what they were saying. They actually even talked about naming kind of your different personalities, if you will, right? So Eric, who wants a bunch of pizza and a bunch of beer, maybe I call him the glutton or something like that. And it's like, oh, the glutton showed up, right? And kind of putting a name to it, which I thought was kind of an interesting way to look at things too.
yeah, something I encourage people, and it's something I try to do myself, and it's something I try to encourage clients to do. When you're having moments like that, our tendency is a lot of times to put like some kind of negative label on it, some kind of judgment. Instead, ask yourself, okay, this feeling I'm feeling right now, what is it trying to tell me? Like what's the deeper need? It's probably not another piece of pizza. Maybe it's, I want to fit in with the group, everybody else. Maybe it's it's like a comfort food thing. I don't know what it is, but like taking a moment to like, okay, I'm feeling this desire to have another beer, have another piece of pizza. I know I don't actually need it. I know it's not conducive to my goal. So what's really driving this? Like what's the underlying message here? And then how can I meet that need? I was just doing a group therapy session just last night and we did this rundown, had people. So it's for this group is for people with like addiction issues. And so we had them do basically a breakdown of their most recent relapse, whether that was 2 days ago or 2 years ago, when, kind of breaking down how that all occurred. And we that was one of the things we got to was like, okay, that feeling you had in that moment, what was it trying to tell you? And so the types of responses I was getting was like, um, I was really sad and like I didn't have this or that in my life, or like I needed more people around me. I needed a better support system. It's like they're able to identify all these things that were really going on, and then come to the conclusion that like had I tried to meet that need, life would have gotten better, and I wouldn't have wound up doing whatever it was that I did. Um, but that takes like stop and think and ask yourself some hard questions. You know.
Yeah. Well, and I think you where focusing on where you want to go is so important too. I was talking with my coach about something about this basically yesterday. And we were talking about when we were in the army, we'd go on these long ruck marches, and there was a time during that march where basically the only thing you looked at was your own toes, right? It was having your head down, and it's like, this sucks, and you're just focusing on each step, and you get to a point where you say, I don't know that I can do this anymore. But when you lift your head up and you start picking points on the horizon and say, okay, I don't have to worry about going all the way to the end. I need to focus on getting from here to here. I used to do that back when I ran. I used to do that, right? It's like the lungs are burning, the muscles are hurting, and it's like, okay, I can stop now, or I can get to that next lamppost, right? And then I get to the next lamppost. It's like, okay, you know what? I can move on to the next one and the next one, and it's amazing. It's kind of like that, raise your arm as high as you can. Now raise it 3 more inches. How you can find that extra little bit, but it's because you're focused on the future, on the positive, on what you truly want versus what you want right now, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like this is starting to become a commercial for the 7 habits of highly effective people, but that's begin with the end in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's and yeah, that is such a great book. um and I guess that's an interesting question too, because you talked about, is this what you want, or does it just sound good? So do you have any tools, or I don't want to call them tricks, but any trade secrets that you use with people to help them really say, yeah, this is what I want versus, yeah, it sounded good, or it's what my mom or my dad or my wife or whoever it is want for me, so I think I want it for myself.
Yeah, there's different things, like one is, the whole end in mind thing. So one is like, okay, you go down this road, what does it look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? I mean, you do that kind of stuff in your workshops and things. I've done those types of exercises with you. So that kind of stuff can be helpful to just to see like what their vision is. You know, another would be just a simple like, okay, what does that take? What does it take to get there? What does that look like? Not 10 years from now, but what does it look like tomorrow and the day after? To see how much thought's gone into the practical real world steps, you know. That reminds me, I had a conversation with a lady one time, it was somebody I used to supervise, and she had this idea she wanted to start her own practice, and she was, kind of asking me for some insight and advice and stuff. And talking to her, I could tell like she's got like her end goal is good and everything, and she's got like a good, the desire is good, but she just had no clue like what was going to need to go into. I mean, basic stuff like who's paying for this, like these sessions that you're doing. Are you taking insurance? Are you getting government contracts? Are you, like, okay, you said you wanted to run this kind of program. Do you know the rules for that? You can't just say I do this. Like there's steps involved. Um, so like having those kinds of thought, those kinds of conversations. What's the next step? What's the step after that? Um, just see how thought out it is. Another thing is try to argue against it, see what kind of rebuttal you get. People, that's another little technique is push the other way to see how committed and what kind of defenses people throw up. So like when they're telling you about how they like this idea of starting this business, you can, oh, that sounds awful. I'd be scared of this, that, and the other, and see, do they come back with like, no, I can because this won't be a problem because of this and this because of that, you know. Or you can go the other way too and be like, sounds golden. You got nothing to worry about. Sounds like you should be a millionaire next year. And then sometimes that'll push people into people just instinctively come up with a response, whichever way you go. So if you're like, yeah, that sounds awesome, like you're gonna get rich in no time, then a lot of times they'll kick back with, well, I mean, I don't know if I'm gonna be rich next year. I mean, I got to figure this out and that out, and you know, um, so yeah, those are a few things that come to mind.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And you know, the two other things that popped into my head as I'm thinking about moving from that fear of the unknown, that fear of the future, that expanding that comfort zone. I mean, two other things that have to happen for there to be success there. Number one is involving others, right? Because whether it's something that you're talking about or owning your own business, it can be really, really lonely, right? So having people there who are cheerleaders, but also accountability, right? People there to remind you of, okay, you said this was important to you. I'm here to help you. I'm here to encourage you. You know, the if you got people around you who are constantly telling you you can't do this and you ain't got this, then you may want to think about moving to another room. You know, and then I think the other thing, and this is this has gotten me out of so many tight spots over my life, is move, take action, do something, right? Because you find yourself in the situation and you can kind of get, you know, paralysis by analysis or frozen by the fear or whatever it is. But when you just start moving, things get better. It seems almost just naturally, because the nice thing about that is if you start moving in a direction and you realize it's not the right direction, well, at least you've already got some momentum to turn yourself, right? It's the analogy of the you can't steer a parked car, right? But if you're moving forward, flip that signal on and whippy yoo if you need to.
Yeah, yeah, and you figured out you were going the wrong direction, which you wouldn't have done had you not started moving.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's such a big part of it is being open to the information, but not dwelling on it too much, right? Being able to pick out what's the right piece of information that I need to be considering to continue this momentum or to take this momentum. And I think again, that goes back to having the right people around you, the people who are asking the right questions, the people who are encouraging you, and the people who are helping you get out of your own way and holding you accountable as well.
Yeah. Well, what happens if one of those doubters is yourself? I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges I run into in my profession is, yeah, there are people who sometimes aren't supportive, but sometimes the worst critics are the ones in our own head.
Oh, absolutely. You know, what's the saying? The most important thing you'll ever say, or the words you say to yourself about yourself when you're by yourself. And I think it goes back to how we kind of started this episode out, is taking your thoughts captive, being aware that, you know, the saboteur or whoever it is, evil Eric, stupid Eric, you know, we did a whole episode about stupid and how stupid Eric likes to make me do things that I shouldn't be doing, right? Take out the trash instead of calling leads, whatever it might be. So I think being able to recognize and label that, and then I think it goes back again to being able to talk to people. I had a mindset coach I worked with for a while, and she had me do, I think she called it a reverse bucket list. And it was basically write down all of the accomplishments in your life, and then read it as if you didn't know who the person was, and tell me, would you be impressed by this person and their capabilities or not? And it was really an interesting exercise. Another one that was really interesting was having, your mom, your husband, your wife, your kids, especially, write a letter to you about what they admire about you, or what they think you do well, kind of what your strengths are. And it really is, or why they admire you, I think is what it was. And that was pretty powerful to say the least.
Yeah, I bet. Going back to the whole stupid Eric thing, you said like stupid Eric wants you to take out the trash instead of call leads. That kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. So like, what's the feeling that's keeping you from calling leads? Probably some kind of fear or whatever. So then asking yourself, okay, what's this? Like, where's this fear coming from? What kind of message is it trying to communicate to me? What am I actually afraid of? And then what's an actual, like, healthy response to that fear? You know, because all those things are normal. Fear is part of being human. Anger is part of being human. Sadness is part of being human. And we try to often either like escape those feelings, or we try to just kind of push them away and not deal with them. And so, what I encourage people to do is, okay, pretend like that feeling is a friend of yours and it's trying to help you. What is it trying? Maybe it's not doing it in the best way, but it's trying to help you. So, like, what is it trying to do for you? Figure that out, and then see if you can figure out a healthy way to get that need met. You know?
Yeah, that's interesting because it really is, intriguing, I guess, that you think about our brains are still wired the way that they were when we were trying to keep from being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, right? And now, now we live in, McMansions and drive sports cars and all these wonderful things, and saber-toothed tigers don't exist anymore.
No, but it still ties into these real, like you said, these real basic human instincts. A friend of mine, I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine last night, not a client or anything, just a guy I've known for like 20 years. And we were talking about how you kind of can lose yourself sometimes in life, and how there are these moments where you're not like your most authentic self. And he was like, "Well, what do you think causes that?" And I said, I think a lot of times it's just the pressures of life. It's those things. And I was like, so I was telling him, like, I use an example of like being a business owner. I'm like, there are things that are genuine to me that made me want to start a business, you know? But then there are things that are not so genuine to me that I maintain so that I can keep the business that I wanted for genuine reasons. And so I use the example of like things like certain, like, networking or marketing or certain ways I interact with certain people. I'm like, because I just am afraid if I showed up and was just totally me, I would lose people, and then business would go down. And then now this thing that I wanted for all these reasons that are real is not there anymore. Um, and so it's tough. It's like a tough, but that all boils down to like in the moment, it might seem silly, like, why do I feel like I have to have this fake smile and say something that might not be completely genuine, in the moment, because it's tied to this deep rooted fear of like losing this thing that's really important that provides for my well being, my family's well being, you know. So yeah, it's all what I tell people a lot is like if you can get enough pieces of the puzzle put together, it all makes sense. And I think that's these little fears, whether it's like I don't want to call this person, or how am I going to interact with this person, or whatever. They all make sense if you can figure out how they're connected.
Mm. Yeah, and the funny thing is, at no point did I ever have anybody yell at me or call me anything mean. I think the worst, and maybe this is just Oklahoma, everybody here is fairly nice. I think the worst I got was, I don't remember requesting that. Please take me off of your list. I was like, oh, I'm so wounded. I'll never get over that scathing rebuttal that I just got.
Yeah, well, and it's again, you get into people's histories and stuff, and like what people have been through in their life, and again, like something that might seem harmless um, doesn't feel harmless because of some other past experience.
So, all right. Well, that should do it for this episode of the Business Brains and BS podcast. Remember, progress beats perfection. Hope is not a strategy, but it is a necessity. And the BS that tends to hold us back usually starts in our own heads. If you've enjoyed this episode, follow the show on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Leave us a rating and make sure you share it with a business owner who you think needs to hear it. So until next time, we'll see you.